In this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know about Adobe Photoshop to get you up and running quickly.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hi and welcome back to DIY Film with Merle Becker, the channel where I help you make better videos. All right, before the new year, I asked you guys what videos you wanted to see on this channel in 2022. And I got a slew of Photoshop tutorial requests, among other things. And I aim to please. So I'm kicking off this year with an intro to Adobe Photoshop video. In it, I'll show you what you need to know about the workspace and creating a new file. I'll also show you how to bring in your photos and modify them and demonstrate what each tool does. And if you want to follow along, grab a photo that you can bring into the program to try things out as I demonstrate. Okay, so without further ado, let's fire up Photoshop. I'm working in Photoshop 22.4.2, so if yours is older or newer, it may look slightly different. Also, I move pretty quickly, but feel free to pause the video at any point so you can catch up. So right after you launch the program, you should get a welcome screen, which gives you the option to open or create a new file. We're going to create a new file here. So hit Create New. And you should see a variety of templates to choose from that you can use to create that new file. Before you pick one though, you should consider where your image is ultimately going to end up. Are you creating a graphic for a printed handout? In that case, you would go to the Print tab and choose something like Letter, which gives you a blank template for an 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper. Hold off on clicking that for now. Or maybe you're going to be using this graphic in a video that you're working on, like myself. In that case, you would go to the Film and Video tab and find a template that has the dimensions of a majority of your video clips. I shoot my videos in 4K or UHD 3840 by 2160 pixels, so I would go to the Film and Video tab and choose the 4K option that says 3840 by 2160 underneath. So let's choose that option now by double-clicking on it. And voila, you have a new blank document that's sized perfectly for your 4K video. Now, when you bring your final Photoshop file into Premiere, it won't be stretched or need to be resized at all. It'll fit your frame perfectly. Okay, so let's quickly go through the lay of the land here in Photoshop and talk about what everything is in the workspace. Before we do that though, let's make some modifications. You don't need all these tabs open. So let's close some of them by clicking on the tab and dragging it out of the main window and hitting X in the upper left corner to close it. So let's close the following: color, swatches, patterns, gradients, properties, libraries, adjustments, and paths. I know it seems like we closed almost everything, but you really don't need these open right now. And less clutter will make it easier for you to see the stuff that you actually do need. And by the way, if you ever want to get all these tabs back, you can just go up to Window, Workspace, and scroll down to Essentials. So next, I want to make sure that you have a few other tabs open that might not be open right now. So let's go up to Window and make sure there's a check mark by character. This one will help you modify your text. And the second one I want you to open is Paragraph. You'll need this one to justify your text. And lastly, History. The History tab shows you a list of all the changes you made. Now move these tabs so that they're all in the same panel as your Layers tab. Okay, you're good now. Now let's save your workspace so that you can easily go back to this clean layout if you choose by going to Window, Workspace, New Workspace. Type your name in the name field here. I'll call mine the abbreviation of my channel name, DIYFWMB. Leave the boxes below the name field unchecked and hit save. Now, if you want to access this workspace in the future, you can just go to Window, Workspace, then scroll down to your name. And everything will look clean and tidy like it does now. All right, let's take a look at the workspace itself. So here obviously is your canvas. This is where you'll be creating your design. The next important tab you need to know about is the Layers tab, which is to the right. Photoshop helps you by organizing your work in layers with separate design elements on separate layers. So, for example, I'll open this image of macarons that I'll use in this tutorial. Now, if you're watching this and you want to follow along as I go through each tool, now would be a good time to open your photo and bring it into the new document that you just created by going to File, Open, and navigate to your photo. Once you have it open in Photoshop, let's select all of it by hitting Command-A on a Mac or Control-A on a PC. Copy it by hitting Command-C on a Mac or Control-C on a PC. And then click on your untitled document and paste the image in there by hitting Command-V on a Mac or Control-V on a PC. And you should also take a moment to save your new document by going to File, Save As, and choosing a name. I'll call mine Macaron Title Card. You pick the name that best describes your project. And save it to your desktop. Ignore the Maximize Compatibility message if you get it for now. And hit OK. Now, just to illustrate how the Layers tab works, I'll create some quick text by hitting keyboard shortcut T for the Type tool. And I'll create some type. Don't worry if I'm going kind of fast right now. I'm just setting up another layer so that you can see how the Layers tab works. And now, if you look at the Layers tab, you can see that this document contains 3 layers. The bottom one is a white background, the middle one is the image of the macarons, and the top one is a text layer. And I can turn each one on and off by clicking the little eyeball to the left. Or I can get rid of a layer altogether by dragging it to the bottom right of the Layers tab to the garbage. I'll hit Command-Z to undo that or Control-Z on a PC. Or I can also duplicate a layer by dragging it to the plus sign at the bottom of the Layers tab. And now I have 2 identical text layers. And if I want to, I can make the bottom one gray and move it a little bit to make a quick and dirty drop shadow. So that's the basics of the Layers tab. As a general rule, when you're starting out, you should try to put your different design elements like text, etc. on different layers, so that you can quickly compare or get rid of a layer if you don't like it. Or you can even copy a layer and paste it into another document if you need to reuse an element. Okay, so that's the Layers tab. Now let's do a quick rundown of the tools in the Tools tab on the left. If for some reason you don't see your Tools tab, make sure there's a check mark by Tools under the Windows menu. All right, here's a rundown of what each tool does and how you use it. As we run through them, I'll be listing the keyboard shortcut for each tool on screen, because you should get used to using keyboard shortcuts right from the get-go, so you can work faster and more efficiently. First, you should know that if you hover your cursor over the tool itself, you can always get a little preview of what it does, as well as the shortcut that Photoshop assigned to it. On the top here, we have the Move tool, keyboard shortcut V, which, as you can see by the image here, will move something on your canvas. Below that is the Marquee tool, keyboard shortcut M, which will select an area in a rectangle for you. Also, now's a good time to point out that most of these tools have additional options available to you that you can see if you hold your cursor down on the icon. So here, for example, in the Marquee tool, I can choose an elliptical marquee instead of the rectangle. All right, below that is the Lasso tool, keyboard shortcut L. This is good for cutting items out of photos by either creating points or drawing around it, like so. Below that is the Magic Wand keyboard shortcut W, which makes a quick selection for you by selecting pixels in your image based on the tolerance you select for the wand. To demonstrate, I hit W to bring up the wand, and I can click here with it and it will select everything but the cookies in the table. And then I can cut out my cookies by hitting Command X on a Mac or Control X on a PC. I'll undo that by hitting Command-Z on the Mac, Control-Z on the PC. Below that is the Crop tool, keyboard shortcut C. The Crop tool does just that. It crops your canvas or it makes it smaller. Hit Enter after you find the size you like. You can also use it to expand your canvas. Under that is the Frame tool, keyboard shortcut K. I don't really use this tool that often, but with it you can create a little placeholder for adding other images to your canvas, which I'll do here in the upper right. Below frame is the eyedropper, keyboard shortcut I, which will sample or match other colors in your image. So for example, if I want to make my text the same peach color as the macarons, I can use the eyedropper to sample the peach color on the cookies. And if you look at the bottom of your Tools tab where the color selection is shown, you can see that it's now the same peach color as the macaron. And if I wanted, I could select my text layer by double-clicking it, then go down and click that new peach color. And you can see the text has now changed to peach. I'll Command Z on a Mac or Control Z on a PC to undo that. Under that is the Spot Healing tool, keyboard shortcut J. This is another one that I don't use that often, but say I didn't like how crumbly looking this filling area is here and I wanted to smooth it out. I could select the Spot Healing tool and make my brush size a little bigger or smaller by hitting the left or right brackets on the keyboard and draw a little line along the filling area. And voila, it's smooth and healed, if you will. So yeah, I'm going to Command Z to undo that. Under that is your brush tool, keyboard shortcut B. Use the brush tool to draw on your image, like so. Command Z to undo that. Under that, we have the clone stamp tool, keyboard shortcut S. You could use the clone stamp tool in a situation like, say you wanted to add another stack of macarons to the right here. So first select the macaron layer by clicking on it in the Layers tab. Then hit S on your keyboard to bring up the clone stamp tool, and enlarge your brush if necessary so it's really big by hitting the right bracket on the keyboard a few times. And then hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC to sample your image. You'll see the cursor change to this little crosshair. And now, once you've sampled it by clicking on it, you can click to the right and add a few more. By the way, if you want to change the nature of your brush, say from soft to hard, you can do that up in the upper left here by the number and image of your brush tip. Also, if you're not seeing the circle here outlining the edges of your brush, make sure you don't have caps lock on. That hides the brush edge. Okay, so hit Command or Control Z to get rid of the clone part of the image we just made. All right, below the clone stamp tool is the history brush or keyboard shortcut Y. This is another tool I rarely use, but here it is nonetheless. So first I'll draw some random lines on my macaron layer to illustrate how it works by hitting B for brush. I'll draw a line or two. Then I'll use the history brush by hitting Y to revert back to the original. And you can see that where I dragged it over, it reverted back to what it looked like before I drew on it. Now is also a good time to point out that you also have a History tab here on the right, where you can see a chronological list of all the changes you made to your Photoshop document. And if you drag that History brush action to the trash in the lower right of the History tab, the brush strokes reappear on my canvas. But then I can just drag the brush strokes action to the trash too, and voila, no more lines. So that's your History tab. Okay, back to Tools. Next up is the Eraser tool, keyboard shortcut E, which does just that. It erases. I'll undo that by hitting Command Z on the Mac, Control Z on the PC. Below the Eraser tool is the Gradient tool, keyboard shortcut G, which will make a nice gradient on a solid background. So, for example, I'll make a new layer here by going to these four little lines in the upper right of the Layers tab and choosing New Layer. I'll call it Gradient, and drag it down below the text layer. And say you want a gradient background which goes from peach to black. In this case, choose black as your second color down here at the bottom of the Tools tab in the Color Picker area. Now, when you click and drag your cursor from one side of the image to the other, it creates a peach and black gradient. If you look at your Layers tab, you can see the gradient on this layer here. And you can also change the opacity of this layer so there's a very slight gradient, so you can still see the macarons by dragging the slider by opacity. But that gradient looks awful, so let's trash the layer altogether by dragging it to the trash in the lower right of the Layers tab. Moving right along, next up is the Smudge tool. The default keyboard layout for Photoshop does not have a keyboard shortcut set for smudge. So now might be a good time to show you how to assign a keyboard shortcut to a tool in Photoshop. Super quick, you can set a keyboard shortcut by going up to Window, Workspace, Keyboard Shortcuts, and Menus. And by shortcuts 4, change the drop-down menu to Tools. And scroll down to the Smudge tool, which is right here around the middle. And you can see that there is no letter assigned to smudge. So we'll pick M. Now I'm choosing M because it's already being used by Marquee, and I want to show you how to switch between the two once you have two tools with the same shortcut. Now when I hit M on my keyboard, it brings up the Smudge tool. And you can even see it updated in the shortcut on the animated menu. So now if you want to go back to the Marquee tool, you can just hit Shift M and it goes back to Marquee, or Shift M again and it goes back to Smudge. Alright, so Smudge will smooth out an area. I use this sometimes when retouching a portrait to smooth out wrinkles. So say for example, you want to make this top macaron here a little less sharp. Hit M for Smudge, change the brush size to a larger one by hitting the right bracket on your keyboard, and drag the smudge brush across the top macaron, and it will stretch/blur it. If you're on a slower computer, this might take a minute to process. Alright, hit Command or Control Z to undo that nonsense. Below Smudge is the Dodge tool, keyboard shortcut O. If any of you have worked in an old school photo darkroom, you'll know exactly what the Dodge tool does. The Dodge tool will basically create a slightly lighter area wherever you drag it, making it look like a light was just placed on the left. There you go, digital dodging. Hit Command Z or Control Z to undo that. Under Dodge is your Pen tool, keyboard shortcut P. The Pen tool is used to create paths, which you can then fill or outline. So to illustrate, I'm going to use the Pen tool to draw a line around this top macaron. Just a heads up, the Pen tool takes a little getting used to, so if you find it a little frustrating at first, just know that you're not alone. Click and drag while using Pen to create a rounded path. To move a point once you've created it, hit Command on a Mac or Control on a PC. So now you can see a new shape layer was created here in the Layers tab with the Pen tool's handiwork. Now if I go to the menu at the top, I can either fill or unfill it, or maybe give it a stroke. There's several more advanced uses for the Pen tool, but those are the basics. Let's delete that shape layer by dragging it to the trash in the Layers tab. Below Pen is the Type tool, keyboard shortcut T, which you would use to put text on your image. So first, make sure there are no layers selected by clicking the gray area below your background layer in your Layers tab. And to add some type, hit T on the keyboard. And now you can see you have a new text layer in your Layers tab. To change the font type or font size, you can either go to the top menu here or over to the Character tab, where you will also see your options for bold and italic, etc. Alright, under the Type tool, you have a Path Selection tool, keyboard shortcut A. This is another one I don't use a whole lot, but once you have a path, the Path Selection tool will select every anchor point on the path, the entire path. So for example, let's draw a quick path here with the Pen tool, hit P to bring it up, draw 4 points to create a square, then hit A to bring up the Path Selection tool, and it allows you to select all of the points and move the square at will. Under the Path Selection tool is the Line tool, keyboard shortcut U, which you can use to obviously draw solid, dashed, or even dotted lines. Hit U to bring up the Line tool. For this example, make sure your top left menu here says Shape, and click on your canvas to create a point, and drag your cursor to make a line. Holding Shift will make a perfectly straight horizontal or vertical line. And now you can modify the color or width of the line up here, or in the Properties tab. Alright, delete those line layers by dragging them to the trash. Under that, we have the Hand tool, keyboard shortcut H, which moves your whole canvas around so that you can work on a specific area. And the next tool also helps you to work on a specific area by zooming, and that's the Zoom tool, keyboard shortcut Z, which does just that. It zooms into a portion of your canvas. To zoom back out, hit Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC, and you'll see the little magnifying glass turn to a minus. Click your mouse or keypad and it zooms out. And amazingly enough, we made it to the end. That's it for the tools. Now, before we end the video, let's show you how to quickly save your work by hitting Command S on a Mac or Control S on a PC, and then quitting the program by hitting Command Q on a Mac or Control-Q on a PC. And now you're out, and your document should be saved to your desktop where we put it earlier. All right, hopefully you were able to follow along. And now you have at least a very basic knowledge of Photoshop, what it does and how to use the tools. I'll be going into a little more depth in future videos, so be sure to subscribe if you want to keep learning. And if you found any of this helpful, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when the next one is posted, and I will catch you next time.